This is an actual Jew. This is a person who believes in God, who believes in creation, not an atheist Jew as Richard Kutcher's wife describes herself. Because a true believer in a higher intelligence and a higher God will never condone the indiscriminate bombing and slaughter of people the way Israel does to the Palestinians. So just listen to this guy who actually believes in the Jewish religion.
2,000 years ago, we were given an edict, a decree by God, it's a prophecy of King Solomon, that we ought not to attempt to recreate our sovereignty. Even 1 inch of Jewish sovereignty, even in an uninhabited land, is expressly forbidden. And we Jews wait for the day when God will make a miracle where all humanity will serve him in harmony. We won't have to convince an atheist that there is a God. Everybody will recognize God, and then we will all go up and serve him. Prior to that event, we are expressly forbidden to try to attempt to make any Jewish nationalism sovereignty, and this was respected and upheld by Jews throughout the trials and tribulations of the Inquisition, the Crusades, and every time period of Judaism when they were easily capable of buying land. They never did it because they understood this is against the will of the Almighty, and this is not what it means to be a Jew.
So there you have it. According to Torah Jews, who are the true Orthodox Jews, according to their God, the state of Israel should not be in existence. The state of Israel and Zionism was around the time the bankers had found oil in the Middle East. It was around 1873, I think, the first talk of establishing the state of Israel. And because they had already attached themselves to Judaism in the way they take over the printing of money, these Ashkenazi parasites, I mentioned before, the Roma, the Gypsies, they're parasites at the bottom of society, or the bottom of the economic pole, whereas the Ashkenazis are parasites at the top. There's a couple of reasons why the Ashkenazis adopted Judaism. One, a lot of them converted during the Ottoman Empire when they took over a lot of Europe. A lot of these Ashkenazi Europeans converted to Judaism because atheists were slaughtered by the Muslims. They allowed Jews and Christians to live, but they always went after atheists. But even prior to that, especially with the printing of money, see, the Jews, as described by that earlier rabbi, is they are stateless. So from a position of statelessness, you can print money. So you couldn't have one nation printing the money of another nation, or then there wouldn't be two nations. So you need this kind of entity that floats above all other nations to be the printer of the money. And that's what these guys have always aspired to do, because they know if they print the money, they own the nations, they own the politicians, they have, especially printing money in interest, they have an inexhaustible supply of money, of wealth, that they drain from the nations. There's two reasons why they set up Israel. Over a lot of years, hundreds of years, the Ashkenazis, or Jews as they call themselves, but they're imposter Jews, they don't really believe in a God. They've been kicked out of a lot of countries for the usury, where they went to claim the nation states, and militarily they got removed. And they had to just go to other states. So they set up Israel as a haven that they can regroup and then, not be wiped out entirely. They'll always have somewhere in order to regroup. And also, I mean, they're so powerful now, but back when Israel was set up, they weren't as powerful. But now the debt is 2.5 times the GDP of the entire world. So they've essentially owned the world now, but they can't militarily. They did with Greece. They went and just took their land off them now. The Greeks don't have anything, but they want to do that to the whole world. So when they crash the economy, which is coming soon. But they also set up Israel to take over the oil, because they realized early on, back in the late 1800s, that oil was going to be the driver of the industrial world, of the industrial revolution, and will be the most valuable resource. So they've had their eye on that area for a long time. They controlled the Shah of Iran through the Shah, and then he got kicked out by the Ayatollah, and they didn't like that at all. So their Greater Israel project is to expand Israel's borders, or at least military control over towards Iran. They're going to invade Iran eventually. So they want from Iran to the Mediterranean, which is Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, all of them oil-holding nations. Saudi Arabia, their leadership sold out to them a long time ago. They want to control all of the oil. So if they control the major resource as well as print the money, they're going to be unstoppable. And that's their plan as well. So anyway, they're not Jews, and we'll just watch a bit more about. So you've got the Palestinian Jews. They were there before the invasion of the Ashkenazis after World War II. So let's just watch them.
أتباعها يعتبرون أنفسهم يهودا فلسطينيين ويتمنون العيش في ظل حكم فلسطيني تعدادهم يقارب 5,000 في هذا الحي فقط.
אין שלום לרשעים, אמר האלוקים. זאת אומרת,
بحسب الكتاب المقدس لا يمكن صنع السلام مع الأشرار. الصهاينة لا ينتمون أبدا للشعب اليهودي، وهم ليسوا يهودا ولا ينتمون إلى أرض فلسطين التاريخية بتاتا. نحن فلسطينيون يهود، ونريد أن نعيش تحت الحكم الفلسطيني الذي سيقام قريبا ويتسلم الحكم على كل مناطق الأرض المقدسة.
Before the Ashkenazi psychopaths' invasion of the Middle East, that has created a permanent state of war and conflict and death and destruction since Israel was started, Palestine and that part of the Middle East, including Lebanon, all through there, was peaceful, it was prosperous. Google Palestine in the 1930s, and all they're wearing Western clothes, and people are holidaying on the beach. There were resorts there. It was a bit like the other side of the Mediterranean over at France and Spain. It was just peaceful and prosperous. These actual Jews, the Palestinian Jews, they want it to go back to that. They don't want this constant state of war. They don't want to see the Palestinians killed, because they believe in a God and they believe in doing good. Whereas the atheist Ashkenazis, they're just there to first of all get the oil from the Golan Heights, which they militarily annexed from Syria, and then discovered, oh, there's oil there. Well, they knew there was oil there all the time, and they know where all the oil fields are. That's why ISIS controls oil fields still in Syria, around Idlib and a few places like that, because the bankers, which is the American military, are guarding it, under the guise of, we're still fighting ISIS when ISIS isn't. We're protecting ISIS. The only active ISIS is coming from American-controlled areas. But they only want to control that area because they're just pumping oil out as fast as they can. They don't want it to go back to the Syrian government. And the Syrian government, I think it's only one of two countries, I think it's Iran and Syria, that don't have a Ashkenazi central bank. It's another reason they want to get rid of Syria, but they also want to take over their land militarily. And, they'll make out like Syria still exists, but they'll just have some puppet paid for, just like we had Turnbull and the Americans had Bush and the rest of them, that just served the bankers. And that's these Ashkenazi bankers. That's what it's all about. So these Palestinian Jews, they want to go back to living in peace, but that won't happen while Israel is there, because while they're expanding their borders, they're going to keep killing people. Now, there are protesters. So we'll just watch a bit of these protesters.
Street again, protesting against the leaders of Israel.
There were some protesters in New York. So the Torah Jews, they don't want Israel to be in existence, the actual Jews. Now, let's watch an Ashkenazi imposter Jew. This is how they treat actual Jews. This is what they really think of Judaism. There he is, the big Ashkenazi atheist imposter Jew. He's just like Netanyahu. And these guys are all in the same mold. Make out like, oh, we're under attack. We must defend ourselves by killing everyone in sight. And Netanyahu was at the UN rattling the saber about holding up a piece of paper that he's just made a drawing of. Look, Iran has nuclear weapons. Absolutely no nuclear weapons. No weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They attacked the US Liberty, trying to create a false flag to drag America into attack Egypt and all this sort of stuff. These bankers, tricks and that the bankers go on with. But look, they're the murderers. The Zionist bankers are the murderers. The Jews aren't. The Jews are divided into Torah Jews, which is these guys, and what they call the Talmudic Jews. So Talmud was written, the Torah is taken from passages in the Bible. That's the actual, where the birth of Judaism came from. The Talmud was written after, I think it was written once the Ashkenazis had decided they wanted to become Jews to be the chosen ones, because that's what they saw themselves as. So they needed a religion to hide behind, which is what they do today with all this anti-Semitism stuff. Now, it's interesting in that they've set it up so that all other religions, Christianity, they talk about the Big Bang Theory, and they always mock there being a God, but only the Christian God. They never, and they say Allah Akbar, that's a load of rubbish, but they never, they use science to try and debunk the existence of God, which sort of shows their hand a bit, and that they're hiding the hypocrisy. They're hiding behind a religion and never bagging that particular religion, but they're kind of bagging it in the way they're bagging other religions and trying to what's the word I'm after? Delegitimize other religions. They're actually delegitimizing Judaism, but they don't do it outwardly. But they don't mind if it is, because they're not really Jews anyway. They're atheists. And people can fall into this trap also of thinking that they're Satanists and they're the Satanist bankers. Well, I don't think that's true. It could be true, obviously, but I don't think it is. I think they're just purely atheists, and they purely only believe in the physical world, and they want to dominate that physical world because they don't think there's anything else. They don't think there's anything else out there, hence they want to dominate this one. Religions believe there's more to their existence than just this physical world, so they don't try and dominate this physical world entirely. So that's their mindset, if that makes any sense to anyone. And Satanists, if you're a true Satanist, then you believe in God. You believe in Satan, you must believe in God. So, and these guys do not believe in God, so they're not Satanists, and they do bad things, obviously, to other people. And look, the Satanists can be bad as well. There are Satanists, and they can sort of look a bit like atheists, but they will do, anti-good things, evil things, but they do it as a belief system, whereas these atheists do it purely because they want to take over the physical world. One other thing I want to add, not all Ashkenazis are bad. Like in all populations of people, you're going to have a breakdown of, different, so many people that will break the law, so many people that are good, so many people that will harm others. No population is any better than the other. It's from our biology. So, Ashkenazis like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro, look, they benefit immensely from being the money printers. They wouldn't have shows otherwise. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I know Ben Shapiro doesn't support, slaughtering people, and I know Dave Rubin doesn't as well. But they kind of, they do benefit from, and they know they do. Larry David, Seinfeld, all these Jewish entertainers, they do their bit, in undermining Christianity, and not Shapiro and Rubin, but certainly Larry David, where he was pissing on Jesus in one of his Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was only comedy. That's the way I still see it, but I think someone did call him out for, attacking Christianity. It might have been a call for an uprising. And I do think that was probably part of it too, because he would never do it to an image of Muhammad or anyone like that. So they're definitely going after Christianity. I'll do another video after this about how feminism is merely a weapon used by one patriarchy, i.e. the Ashkenazi bankers, over another patriarchy, which is Western patriarchy. See, they tried to take over nations, but the Western patriarchy kept fighting them and kicking them out. So they had to bring down the patriarchies in other nations in order to take them over. Well, ultimately, because that's their goal, they don't want to be kicked out anymore. Once they cash in, which they did on Greece, they do that all over the world. They don't want a bunch of blokes with guns kicking them out and go, well, that's just a piece of paper you got that says you own everything. We've got a gun that says you don't, and they want to remove that as well. So feminism is being used, and look, it looks genuine, but it's not. It's not women. It's not. It's to get to you as well. It's a weapon against women, Western women as well, and all that stuff about promoting singledom and not having babies, and have a career and have an empty womb. Women aren't made to have empty wombs, Anyway, that's a video for that's my next video. So anyway, that's the end of this one. Like I said, it's not the Jews. It's not the Jews. It's the imposter Jews. All right, that's it.